Live from the Mecca Mormonism, this is Heart of the Matter, Salt Lake City. I'm your host, Shawn McCraney. We're doing all we can to try to learn from each other on how to live in the age of fulfillment. We've hit on the biblical definition of marriages. We've talked about homosexual unions. We've talked about sexual practices within and outside of marriage. We've talked about masturbation. Master and Johnson and Kinsey would be proud of us. We've also talked about abortion. Tonight, I want to wrap this whole thing up about sex, almost, by hitting on the ancillary issues that sort of remain and orbit around sex in the age of Christian fulfillment, and that is artificial insemination, in vitro fertilization, the morning after pill, which is the abortion question. We already covered that. And then finally, and especially, adoption. So simply put, those things, artificial insemination, in vitro, and the morning after pill, it seems to me that the Christian world ought to collectively take a breath and respond with, it's between you and your God. Simple as that, all of it. That's the age we live in. Thanks be to God through Christ. Those who seek and love him are going to choose actions that are in accordance with his spirit. Whatever they may be, you can relax as long as the spirit and the motive behind it is in accordance with him. And those who don't care about God will choose and act relative to what they want to do. We're all accountable from the Christian perspective before God for the choices that we make. And it's as simple as that. So let's let people live their lives and be accountable, and that includes ourselves. We therefore don't have the right or the duty, I emphasize that, to judge anyone anymore on the choices that they make in their personal lives. I just don't think there's much more to say, with the exception of the topic of adoption. And I just want to touch on that because it really is a beautiful message. Last week, we talked about abortion, and that was pretty harsh. I want to talk about that other A word, adoption. It is such a beautiful point that is emphasized throughout the Bible, which I love. Interestingly, the Bible directly and indirectly talks about adoption, and it's always a magnanimous act on the part of those who are doing it. The conversation dates back to the Old Testament, where God himself is called the Father of the fatherless. I mean, that is just, that makes him the biggest adopter of people on earth. And I think it's just beautiful. Our Father has a deep and abiding heart for the orphans and the fatherless on this earth. And the act of adoption, it seems to rank right up there with one of the most loving things a person can do in their life. But it has to be in accordance with the Spirit, moving people's lives and according to how he wants them to go. For instance, Mary and I have long desired to adopt children who weren't wanted as babies or were being born to mothers out of wedlock. We have tried on a couple occasions to step in and adopt children who were unwanted, but it was never the right thing, and it never worked out. It never became something that was really in motion for us, even though we stepped out and said, hey, we'll adopt that child. And so are we lesser Christians because of that? Not in the least. Not in the least. Are people who do adopt better Christians? Not in the least. It all has to be in accordance with what God has done for you and in your life, and whether he's set you up to do this thing or not. In our life, we've tried to live what he's given us the best of our abilities by the Spirit, trusting the course is in harmony with his will, and we don't look askance at someone who adopts, and we don't look in any other way. We don't judge. We think it's a beautiful thing, and those who are led to do it should do it. God bless them. It's a selfless act. And when it's done for the benefit of a child who doesn't have parents, or the destitute or childless parents, it's a beautiful thing. Caring for the widows and the fatherless is even the very definition of religion that James, the brother of Jesus, gave in his epistle, saying, pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, ready? To visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. Now, the Greek word translated to visit is episkeptomai, and it means to look out for, to care for. That's what visit means, to look out for and care for the fatherless and widows in their affliction. What's interesting is that passage has been broken up by many religionists in this world and turned adoption into a multi-billion-dollar industry, when in fact, the fact of the matter is the verse really is speaking to families families who have been devastated by the loss of a husband. That's why he puts them together to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction. He puts fatherless and widows together, meaning a wife who's lost a husband who has children. And not just the fatherless and making adoption this huge worldwide business. It's an important distinction if you really want to examine that. Nevertheless, adoption is a central theme in the gospel, as God took the children of Israel and he made them his own people, actually made them his bride, and she would ultimately reject him and his son, and whom he would send, and God would, by virtue of faith in non-Jews, abiding faith in non-Jews, meaning Gentiles, he adopts each individual who has had faith on his son. And he's made us his sons and daughters, making us children of Abraham by adoption. That is what Paul says. I'm a Gentile, I was made a child of Abraham by adoption, right? That's quite an endorsement for the act. The beautiful thing about it is this perfect example of adoption is that it is executed by a being who is love. He doesn't have love. That being is love. And he's adopting people into his family, making them his sons and daughters because of that love. I say this because when it comes to adoption and what I think our view should be in this age of fulfillment of adoption, is whether it be of God and of his children or of humans, of another human child, the key component that is driving adoption is love. When love is the driver behind adoption, it cannot be wrong. That's the kind of love that is defined as kind and patient, long-suffering and good and true and selfless and all those things. Is that kind of love always and only present with married heterosexual couples? No, it's not. Is that kind of love always present with single parents? No, it's not. Is that kind of love present only with homosexual couples? No, it's not. But when this love for children, this agape love, no matter who is involved, is present, and they are moved to adopt and care for children, adoption to me is good, and it's right, and it's acceptable. I mean, we know that there are men who lose their wives and they go on and they raise children all by themselves. We know that there are women who lose their husbands and they raise their children in love all by themselves, and they do this well. So we know then that single people who love children can take care of children and raise them up well. So single adults should be able to adopt. I mean, is it ideal? Not always. In fact, being a single parent is brutally difficult, but it does not mean a child cannot benefit from the love of a single parent in this age. Now, I know we have these groups that say, no, we need to have the family values of each. And that's ideal when you have a loving mother and a loving father and who are there to raise up a child. But if you don't have that, it doesn't mean you can't raise up a child. That's just dogmatically ridiculous. In our day and age, we see images of movie stars popping up here and there, and they adopt a whole brood from different countries, you know. They're all different colors and everything like that. And the natural tendency for people like Focus on the Family is to poke fun of them and, oh, you know, that is just horrible. What's she doing with all those kids? You know, if she loves kids and she can give children a better life, why do we insist as Christians to besmirch that? Let's support when love is given to children, you know? everything, including married couples, come into problems. Everybody has problems when it comes to raising children. So let's not be so persnickety about the subject of adoption. We have to shift our thinking as believers toward this stuff. Let's go of the biased perspectives we bear about with ourselves and rejoice when any child is taken in and loved by one person, two persons, or whatever it might be. Is this the model God established at the beginning? It's not that model. He gave us Adam and Eve. But what is the model anymore in this world? I don't know. So what we fall back on is love. Is love present? Selfless love. So as a means to help future generations, let's see the value of having a relationship with God in their lives. Believers must decide to put our prejudices aside. Let's see the relationship we have in God as by setting aside prejudices and not just rearranging our prejudices, but putting them to death as far as that's possible. Realizing that when it comes to children in this world who are being abandoned and aborted and beaten and starving and all these things, that raising and adopting them in selfless or by selfless agape love, whether it's coming from Elton John and his partner and their two sons, or a single mother and her brood of children, or a happily married heterosexual couple and their family, or a single person who wants to adopt, if love is there, that is something to rejoice over in the age of fulfillment. God will reach those who seek him in anything. So in the age of fulfillment, as with most other things, those who do not care about his will do as they please. And if love isn't there, it's going to be a disaster. But those who are moved by his love to reach out and benefit the life of another human being, especially a child through adoption, let's rejoice over that. Let's change our attitude over that as Christians and move on through this life, trying to bring Jesus into every situation. Write your comments below and tell us what you think on the subject of adoption or anything else, and we'll cover them tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Mountain here on Heart of the Matter.